It's episode 665 of the Locked On Rangers podcast. On today's show, talking about a rough pitching weekend for the Rangers, the minor leaguers unionizing, and how good Corey Seager is compared to all the other shortstops in the land. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Monday, August 29th. Your Rangers are 58-69, which, the nice loss was less nice and extremely weird, and we're going to get into it. But first, thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment anything below. Now, let's start off with the big news of the day. The minor leaguers are trying to unionize. The MLB Players Association is going to help minor leaguers unionize. This will be the first time in minor league history, and this is huge news. One of the biggest problems I've had with the MLBPA, not that I've had a whole lot of problems with them, besides them like kind of dragging their heels and not being quite as aggressive as they could be in some of these negotiations, including some of the negotiations for the new CBA this winter, which they actually did a good job. It felt like they got to the owners, but still the owners, as always, got a much better end of the deal. But this feels like a real shot back at ownership and just a thing that they obviously should have done a long time ago. Major League Players Association is a very powerful union. Major League Baseball is a very powerful entity, but the Players Association is an extremely powerful union that went toe-to-toe with them, was able to get Major League Baseball to cave to several of their demands, make some big concessions in this most recent CBA, even though they were willing to go into the season to get it done. They dug their heels in and, they didn't quite get as much as they wanted, but they made some significant progress on this new CBA, fought back against some of the things that they had been fighting. The owners have been fighting for a long time. They weren't able to get everything they wanted, but this is a huge step forward. Because in a lot of these collective bargaining agreements, a lot of these discussions, things that have happened in the past, including, well, not as much this year, which is one of the things that I really applaud them on in this new CBA. Usually when the MLB PA is trying to get something passed and they're trying to get something better for major leaguers, every time minor leaguers are thrown under the bus. That's why they have such terrible conditions. The average MLB salary right now is $4 million. With minor league contractors, they earn as little as $400 a week. They are not earning a living. They just got Major League Baseball to finally start paying minor leaguers during spring training. Yeah, they weren't getting paid during spring training. The job that requires 100% of you all the time. These guys were only getting paid for 6 months. They would have another 2 months on site where they were working and not getting paid, which is just absolutely criminal in any other organization, any other field of work. But Major League Baseball was able to get around it because they were really good at lobbying and really good at throwing these minor leaguers under the bus because they didn't have a union. Well, now they're working towards getting a union. And as someone who has worked on getting a union, we are still fighting for our first contract after unionizing at the Dallas Morning News, the first Texas newspaper to unionize, which is pretty cool. I'm really proud to be a part of that. They're still fighting to get that contract finally ratified. So I know firsthand how hard it is to organize and to unionize and to convince people that it is in their best interest to come together and collectively bargain. But minor leaguers are even more put upon than journalists in these trying times. But there are a lot more minor leaguers there with a lot of different backgrounds. And one of the reasons that MLB players have been so willing to throw these minor leaguers on the bus, even though they had all been minor leaguers themselves, they're like, well, if I suffer through it, then they can get through it too. But it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And honestly, I've talked about it a million times, but if owners would just pay the minor league players livable wages, give them like housing and give them just a life where they could actually focus on baseball 24/7, you would probably see a lot better prospects, a lot fewer guys wash out, a lot fewer, players not live up to their potential because they couldn't afford to put food on the plate. They couldn't train as hard because they had to go get a second job in the winter, or they had to go play ball in the winter league and they might get hurt there or something else. Like it's not a great system what they have so far, but this is a big deal for minor league baseball. And I am really, really encouraged to see where this news goes. But let's look a little bit at this weekend's game. The Rangers lost 2 out of 3 to the Tigers, including a 1-run loss on Sunday and an absolute just butt kicking on Saturday in the debut of Houston Keuchel. No, he's Houston Keuchel. You allow 7 runs in 5 1/3 innings, and you're going to be Houston Keuchel because you suck now. And the Rangers also had a really nice bobblehead idea for a bobblehead. Former co-host of the show, Morgan Price, was there, and she was tweeting it out, and there was the Adrian Beltre on deck circle, and I thought, wow, that's such a cool idea for a bobblehead. Remember when Adrian Beltre got kicked out for moving the on deck circle? Well, the on deck circle was literally just a piece of paper, and the thing that he was standing on literally looked like a sponge, like just a little small sponge. It was not a lot of effort put into it. It was a great idea, not great execution. And also having that be on there for and having that be Dallas Keuchel Day for Adrian Beltre bobblehead day, subjecting those poor people to that performance is not great. 11 runs by the Tigers is giving up 11 runs to the Tigers is a difficult thing to do. This Tigers offense has been so bad. The only person in their lineup that day, in the starting lineup that day, that had an OPS over 700 was Castro, the first baseman, who had a 3-hit game, which I think is what pushed him over that limit. Yeah, Hero Castro is 28 years old and has played in not that many games this year, 94 games this year, has 5 home runs. Yeah. The guy playing first base has 5 home runs on the year in a little under 100 games. This is not a great offensive team. The Rangers allowed them to score 9 runs on the Sunday game. This was a terrible pitching week for the Rangers. Starting pitchers were not able to do enough. And of course, somehow the Rangers found a way to make a 9-0 deficit into a 1-run loss. Truly a feat that's impressive on its face. You just have to look at this team that has had a historically bad record in 1-run losses. One of these days, maybe in the offseason, maybe on an upcoming off day, not tomorrow. I've already got what's playing going on tomorrow, but I'm going to have to take a look at all of these 1-run losses and whether they were close games or whether they were some games like this where the Rangers tried to come back and just fell a little bit short. Coming up, we're going to look at Corey Seager, where he stacks up on this team, and a little bit of a look at the desperate situation for the Rangers starting staff right now. But first, I got a message for y'all from the NHTSA. Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. Not only do you put yourself in danger, but everyone else around you as well. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. Just don't do it. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. When you are in an impaired state of any kind, do not get behind the wheel. It is just as dangerous no matter what you're doing. If you are not fully sober, do not do it. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Now, let's take a look at Corey Seager this year, who I still can never decide whether I'm very impressed with him or like a little disappointed. And it's always, it comes and goes. Seeger, as soon as you start feeling like, all right, this is the hot streak that's going to get him out of everything he's going to be completely on when everything is completely fixed, then he'll go into a little bit of a slump. But for the last 30 games, I can't decide if he is in a slump or if he is on one. The last 7 games, he has definitely been crushing it. Had a pair of home runs, 5 walks to 3 strikeouts, and on base of 452, slugging 645 in those last 7 games. That is an OPS over 1,100, I think 1,106, if my math is correct. It might not be, but it definitely could be. Corey Seager has been one of the more valuable in terms of WAR shortstops in Major League Baseball this year. According to Fangraphs, he is top 5 in WAR, just ahead of Tommy Edman at 4.2. Baseball Reference, I believe, has him at 3.9 WAR. The top WAR player, according to Fangraphs, at shortstop position is Atlanta's Dansby Swanson, who I'm pretty darn sure has vampired all of the or Space Jam Monstarred all the talent from Charlie Culberson, who is his older self. Maybe it's like a vampire situation where they're like he somehow found out a way to clone himself so that he looks exactly like that, or he made a doppelganger. And initially he was Charlie Culberson, but then switched with Dansby Swanson so that he can continue living his youth-filled life forever. And then there'll be some other person who looks just like Dansby Swanson in about 10 years. We'll realize it's actually the same person just turning into a vampire. But the only people ahead of him in the American League are, literally one player. It's just Xander Bogaerts. At number 2, there's Francisco Lindor, who somehow is getting hate after in the middle of a 5.3 WAR season. And 21 homers from the shortstop position. I don't understand. He's not doing quite as well as his former teammate Trea Turner, who is having a 5.1 WAR season right now. He is out homering him, out hitting him in terms of isolated power and extra base hits and walk percentage. But overall, Trea Turner is providing a little bit more defense, a little bit more on base. And right now, Corey Seager, his batting average, if you're one of those people who very, very much looks at batting average, which if you're a Nathaniel Lowe stan at this point, you're going to want to because he's doing really well in that category. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But Corey Seager is batting 257, but his expecting batting average is even higher than Nathaniel Lowe's. Nathaniel Lowe is hitting 300, which there are not a lot of players that are doing that right now. And Corey Seager at the moment is hitting at 257, but his expecting batting average is much, much higher than that. And if I could find the little thing where I was just looking at Corey Seager and how well he was doing, then I would be able to tell you exactly what his expected batting average is, but it's higher than his. I can tell you that. Corey Seager, his defensive value, his defensive run save or outs above average, I should say, I feel it gets a little bit inflated. The plays that he makes the plays that are hit to him, but his range is not that of a shortstop. I think him at third base would be an exceptional defender. Yeah, his expected batting average is in the 96th percentile, and that expected batting average is 292, the top 4% of the league. His expected slugging is 525. His actual slugging is 476. So there's a stark difference in these, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. I haven't been exactly sure what it is all year. He's hitting the ball fairly hard. His expected WOBA is in the top 3% of baseball. He's barreling the pitches very well, top quarter of baseball. Walk percentage in the top third of baseball. Max exit velo, average exit velo, hard hit percentage, all of those in the top quarter of baseball as well. And it's just kind of a startling thing to see because he's a guy who consistently bats. His career batting average is 290. Right now he's batting under 260. His on base for his career is 361. His on base this season is 334. His slugging percentage for his career is, he's about 23 points below that career slugging percentage at 499 right now at 476 for the year. At OPS, 50 points below his career, even though he's setting career highs in homers this season. He breezed past that on Sunday. He had been on that number 26 tied with his career high. Then he hits that big home run, his 27th of the season, off of Drew Hutchison, or his 20. No, where we go? This is the 28th of the season. He broke it out the other day. Sorry, I am getting my numbers all confused. But this was a player that I still don't know exactly what to do with. He's been worth his contract. Simeon, even with the outstanding month of June and July, slumped a bit in August, but he is coming on a little bit as of late and doing really well in that leadoff spot. In the last 7 days, Marcus Simeon has a 930 OPS. The last couple of weeks, you want to zoom it back that far, he's got 3 home runs in the last 14 days, a 13-game span, an 831 OPS in that time frame. Has not been that great in the month of August, which is weird for him because for his career, usually he does better the later on it gets. We knew the slow start was something that happened in his career. This was an especially slow start. The month of May was also pretty rough for him till the end. Didn't get his first homer until late in the month of May, but the month of June and July, he really looked like the player the Rangers knew they were getting. In August, he has not looked like that as much. It seems like he is turning it on for the month of September, but he's a player that even though he plays pretty much 162 games a year, he's going to play at most 161 this year. It's probably going to be right at 161 because of that one day off. Things started turning around a little bit after that, but He is a guy who, when both those guys are on at the same time, and when they're on at the same time as Adolis Garcia, who I'm going to get to in a minute in his hitting streak, and if they can get all four of those top guys in their lineup hot or getting hot or around the same level of heat at the same time, this is an astonishingly good offense. It has the potential to be one of the better ones in all of Major League Baseball. Coming up, we're going to look at the hitting streak that was snapped, the on-base streak that lives on in Adolis Garcia, and why it gives me great confusion. But first, this word from our sponsors. So Adolis Garcia in Sunday's game snapped his 23-game hitting streak. It was 5 short of tying the franchise high, but the on-base streak lives on. Adolis Garcia walked a pair of times in the Sunday game, the 8-9 loss in a really rough outing for Kohei Arihara. He went 3 1/3 innings, allowed 6 runs. All of those were earned, walked 2, gave up a homer. This was just not a great day on the mound for him, and not a great day for Brock Burke either. A really unlikely, very unusual 3-run outing for him. He had a pair of walks and a pair of hits, and 3 of his 4 base runners scored. They were not anybody's inherited runs. They were just his. His ERA is ballooned all the way up to 160, which I'm pretty darn sure still leads all rookies in Major League Baseball. But he has not been super great in his last 7 outings. 11 innings pitched for him. I think most of this was just from that. He's got 5 earned runs, 5 walks in those last 11 innings pitched. But you look at the last 30 games, he's got a 180 ERA. It's right around what he's been doing for the season. Some good numbers, 44 strikeouts in 44 2/3 innings, just 13 walks. But it is a very, very unusual thing where you see Brock Burke get blown up like that. But Adolis Garcia with the multi-walk game also had an RBI in this one. So the on-base streak lives. And, usually we have a hitting streak of, 20 plus games. You've got some crazy numbers during that span, like like 400 batting average or, 500 or some crazy number of extra base hits and whatever. And that really hasn't been the case. It's basically been the entire month of August. So I'm just going to take his August splits because I'm having trouble looking up the exactly 23 game splits during that hitting streak. But that is 26 games in the month of August. He only has 3 home runs, which right now would be his, if he doesn't play any more games in the month of August, which seems unlikely. He's got at least 1, maybe 2 more against Houston, depending on how many of those games he plays. But right now he would be tied for his lowest homer month. He had 3 in the month of July, where he played in 25 games. He's got 3 in 26 games in August. He had 4 in April and May, even though those were not super great months for him. And he had 7 in the month of June when he was just absolutely on fire. During this month, he has a 763 on base percentage. He's hitting 291 on base, 336, and slugging 427, which is fine. If that was his season average, then I would be honestly totally fine with that for this season. It's honestly kind of right around where he's hitting. It's an OPS, I believe, 6. Yeah, it's 6 points above his OPS for the season. Right now, his season numbers look like this: a slash line of 256, 304 on base, and his OPS is 757 with 21 home runs and 21 stolen bases. He's been a valuable player. The Rangers might be able to get a little bit of an upgrade. I honestly think with how Joey Gallo is doing, I know I keep mentioning him, but he does have Texas Rangers ties. The shift might be banned next year, which I think might make Corey Seager one of the best hitters. Well, he already is one of the best hitters in all of baseball, but he might be putting up numbers like one of the best hitters in all of baseball next year. If you have 2 guys like those 2 that are so incredibly highly shifted on, you bring them both in, that may take this offense from being pretty good to unreasonably murderous, which would be honestly a whole lot of fun to watch. But this game, this loss and the loss on Saturday just kind of prove how rough a spot this Rangers team is in. Glenn Otto was able to go 5 innings against the Tigers, and the only win that the Rangers had, of course, it was a 1-run win. They are doing pretty much better in those games than under Tony Beasley than they were under Chris Woodward. I don't know if that's a coincidence or it's a little bit of bullpen management, or maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, this game shouldn't have been a 1-run win, but Leclerc allowed a pair of runs and 3 strikeouts in his weird save outing. Nathaniel Lowe had his 21st dinger of the season, and Ezekiel Duran had a big 3-run shot, and so did Mark Matthias. Matthias is a guy who I think there definitely needs to be a hard look at whether he should be playing a lot more games than these Brad Miller, Charlie Culberson games. I think we could and should see a lot more of Mark Matthias this year. He has done an incredible job in a short span. 7 games for him this year at the Rangers. 2 homers, 2 doubles, hitting .524 on base, .545, slugging .905. That is a .1450 OPS. The guy has been incredibly valuable. In case you don't remember, he is one of the 2 players acquired in the Matt Bush trade from Milwaukee. He is a guy who plays pretty much every infield position. And right now, through those 7 games, he is a .7 WAR player this season. Actually, that's just for the entire season, not just for his time with Texas. If you look at his time in Texas, it is a .6 WAR season in 7 games. He had a .1 WAR season in 6 games with Milwaukee this year at the major league level. But he has been highly valuable offensively. He's been fine defensively. He's only played, third and first. He could probably play some second, could probably play some corner outfield if the Rangers needed him to do so. I would like to see him do a little bit more of playing first base and Nathaniel Lowe DHing if we could. I wouldn't hate that in the slightest bit. If we look at some of his minor league games, he's played pretty much everywhere around the diamond. He is also went to college with Spencer Howard at Cal Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo in San Luis Obispo, California. He played pretty much everywhere. He is a nice utility glove. I don't know how well he is thought of and respected in the clubhouse, but the Rangers obviously need some good clubhouse camaraderie guy, and they've got a couple of those in. I think Brad Miller is one of those guys. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't still be here. Same with Charlie Culberson, and same with Cole Calhoun, who had his 11th homer of the season. The first homer it feels like he's had in 18 years. It's been a hot minute. He has not done well since he's been called back off the IL. It has been a rough season for him, and it's nice to see him get on the board, even if it was in a losing effort. But yeah, it has not been a great year for Cole Calhoun. I don't think the Rangers are going to exercise that prerogative, that option on his contract prerogative. What if they called options prerogative? That'd be such a weird thing. But anyway, before I spiraled down this tangent, I was talking about the rough state of the Rangers starting rotation. The best starting pitching performance against this offensively anemic Tigers squad went 5 innings and allowed 4 runs. That is not objectively not great. And he is the Rangers' number 3 starter at this point. The Rangers need John Gray to come back so badly. They really needed one of their top guys to take a step forward. And, Cole Reagans did take a little bit of a step forward, but he was put on the IL. Yeah. As soon as everything looked like it was going great, this was why the Rangers were not announcing any of their pitchers before this weekend's games, because they knew that Cole Reagans was going to go on the IL, and that's just incredibly frustrating. One of the few positive developments in this Rangers pitching prospects was Cole Reagans. He comes up to the big leagues, makes his debut, and then boom, he goes on the IL after just a few starts, and the Rangers are forced to call up Dallas Keuchel, who I said was not ready, who was going to do badly. And you know what? He did badly. He did really badly. He did go 5 innings, which the Rangers needed. And there is some value in that. And I don't want to crap too hard on that, because the Rangers are in such a rough spot that even those 5 innings with 7 runs against the freaking Tigers is something that has a little bit of value. But I mean, the Rangers need big performances from Dane Dunning. They need big performances from Martin Perez, every single time out, and they need Glenn Otto as well. And Glenn Otto has been serviceable as the 5th starter, but when he's your number 3 starter, you're in a really rough spot, and there's not a whole lot at AAA that they could call up that is anywhere close it's not like Jack Leiter is breaking down the door. It's not like Kumar Rocker is breaking down the door. By the way, there is some news on Kumar Rocker. He is not pitched up until this point in an actual minor league game, but he is in Arizona doing some bullpens. The Rangers are evaluating him, but he might end up being the Rangers' priority pitcher in the Arizona Fall League. Now, what does that mean? The Rangers can have each team is granted one priority pitcher and position player. They will send 4 pitchers and position players to the Arizona Fall League. That is where Ezekiel Duran absolutely crushed it last year. Same with Owen White. The Rangers have not exactly said who their priority starting pitcher is going to be, but Ross, assistant general manager Ross Fenstermaker, who is in charge of player development. This is what he said in the Dallas Morning News. Quote, one of the very top pitching prospects in the organization is our priority starting pitcher, end quote. Wow, way to say a lot of something and a lot of nothing at the same time. It's not going to be Jack Leiter. We do know that much. He's going to be shut down at the end of the season. He's had some ups and downs, but it seems like he is turning it around, finding that curveball, finding the feel for that curveball in his last start. He hadn't had a very good feel for throwing it for strikes or getting a lot of swings and misses. He felt a lot more comfortable with his slider this year, but that was a big development in his last start where he tied his career high of 8 strikeouts at the professional level in 5 2/3 innings. The rest of the numbers weren't as great, but that is him finding that curveball is a much bigger sign than any of the stats would indicate. So I'm guessing for the Rangers' priority pitcher in the fall league, it might be Owen White again because he hasn't pitched in about a month and a half, and he went on the 7-day IL for arm fatigue, soreness, whatever. He's been around. We have seen him. He's not shipped away, but he has just not been pitching, and I have not heard anything, and I have talked to people who would hear things, and they have not heard things, and I'm beyond the point of annoyed and concerned. I'm just kind of mad at this point. I wish the Rangers would just go ahead and say what the deal is, or I don't know. Maybe the arm that I saw on there is not actually an arm. Maybe I'm just seeing things. But another top prospect who does have some injury news, outfielder Evan Carter, who just turned 20 this past week. Happy belated birthday, Evan Carter, if you're listening. And if you are listening, you want to come on the show? Anyway, he's been placed on the IL with a left knee bruise. That is what he was doing up in Frisco the other day when Rangers fans saw him in Frisco gear on Twitter. He is on the IL with that left knee bruise. He is going to return. Actually, it was yesterday that he turned Sunday. He is going to return by the end of the season, and I'm thinking that he is going to get a little cup of coffee at the Double-A level. The Rough Riders schedule lasts about a week longer than High A Hickory, and that is going to be a hugely positive development for him. Some less good news on the minor league front. Dustin Harris, who has been on the IL with a wrist injury, he is not going to play for the rest of the season. That is a wrist sprain. It's not going to require surgery, but it's just bad enough that he is not going to be able to play for the rest of the minor league season. I really do think that he could be also in the fall league because it's not that bad. It is like just long enough. It has been nagging him for about a week, maybe a couple weeks at this point, but the Rangers want to get him some more at bats. He does have a couple of things offensively that he is still working on. Hasn't been putting up quite the monster numbers that he was putting up last year in OPS of 817 at Frisco this year, which has been fine. He got to play in the Futures game. That was great. A great development for him. But I do think there are some things that the Rangers want to see him get just a few more at bats before they maybe call him up to AAA. There is the possibility that he starts the season at AA next year. I don't think it's a very likely possibility. They're going to want to keep him in left field, keep getting him those reps because he still doesn't look supernatural. He's got some athleticism there, but I do think he will end up as a DH first base type. But if he becomes at least serviceable in left field, that might just be your everyday left fielder, either him or Aaron Zval, who is also crushing it at the AA level in a smaller sample size than Dustin Harris this year and a little bit more impressive numbers at that point. But just some minor league musings and notes. And yeah, even though that Rangers starting pitching situation is rough, there honestly is not a whole lot of hope on the horizon for any of their starting pitching prospects to come back up and make their major league debut at the end of the season. Maybe Cody Bradford, who I talked about last week, of having something that he's turned around in the month of August. I think he's really figured something out. Maybe he'll get a promotion to AAA, where that rotation is incredibly rough and a lot of people taking steps back. At that point, Cole Winn is striking more guys out lately, walking a little bit fewer, but still walking too many. I don't know what the problem is with him, but I'm moving towards the line of straight up frightened. I've been concerned to more concerned to a little bit frightened at this point. I think he'll be able to figure it out, whatever it is. It's not like his stuff is completely gone. It's not like his arm fell off or he forgot how to pitch. I think there's just some little tiny thing that they're probably a bazillion different 24-year-old analysts looking at every single frame of some super high res video of Cole Winn throwing to figure out what small little tweak is goofing everything up and making him walk so many batters this year. But he might end up making his debut in the rotation next year. The Rangers definitely need to go get some pitching free agents and sign Martin Perez to a long-term contract, because right now he is your only, well, he and Dane Dunning are your only reliable starters, and in a rotation that desperately needs John Gray to come back like right freaking now. That's going to do it for today's episode. The Rangers have an off day today. On Monday, they started 2-game series against Houston. This week, we'll look a little bit at that later, and maybe an indication that Josh Young might be coming up this week. Who knows? Who cares? I care, and I know you care, so you'll be tuning in later this week to check out those shows. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On MLB show hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Please just call him Sully. He is a walking baseball encyclopedia with knowledge from baseball's past and present. He is taking you through the Major League season every single day. Go check it out. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. That'll do it for today's show. Until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.